everyone, and welcome to ZoomInfo's webinar entitled How to Unite Marketing and Sales for Revenue Growth. We appreciate you joining us today, and we will kick things off with today's experts shortly, but I need to go over a few housekeeping items first. So if you have any technical issues throughout the webinar, please go ahead and ask questions in the Q&A. We recommend that you log out and try and log back in or refresh your window, because that usually helps any of the issues you're having. Throughout the webinar, if you could ask if you have any questions that you would like to ask the experts, you can then put it into the Q&A section on the right-hand side. Please feel free to ask questions throughout. You do not need to wait until the end. We will get to them at the end, or if they are relevant to what we're discussing, we might actually put it in right then and there. We will be sending this recording out within 48 hours of the end of this, so keep an eye out on your inbox. We have a survey added to the audience console. Please feel free to fill it out at any point during the session. We look forward to any feedback that you might have. We really appreciate it ahead of time, and we look to make sure that these webinars are really impactful for you and that we can answer any questions that you might have. Lastly, our safe harbor statement. We are a publicly traded company. The statement is here on this slide, and it will be sent out with the presentation, but we will likely talk about forward-thinking statements or features within the product, but please make any trading based on what is currently available today. With that, I will introduce myself. I'm Lauren McHugh. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at ZoomInfo, focused on the marketing persona and MarketingOS. I am joined by Anderson Campbell, the Product Marketing Manager, also focused on MarketingOS, and then also Mitchell Hansen. Mitchell is the Senior Director of Demand Generation at ZoomInfo. So if you, as we go throughout this is going to be a very casual conversation. Anderson is going to represent our customers and what we're hearing from the field when we do customer research. And then Mitchell is obviously going to represent himself in our demand gen team here at ZoomInfo. Do you guys want to say anything before we get going, or should we just get started?
Just happy to be here. Thank you, Lauren, and looking forward to a little storytelling about how we've been using MarketingOS and how we do stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Great. Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. All right. Before we get into it, we have one last poll, and then we will get into, or actually, no. We are just going to start with our first scenario. So when we go throughout this webinar, we have 3 scenarios that we're going to walk through. The first scenario we're going to talk about is last-minute sales requests. And one of the scenarios is actually near and dear to both Mitchell and my hearts, especially when it comes to making sure that we are helping sales to get and hit their numbers. So, Mitchell, we know that you are seeing a lot, you and your team especially, get a lot of requests, especially when it's close to the end of a quarter. Can you talk about your experience, how you navigate that, and some learnings that you have come from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing I will say is if you're in demand gen, one of your main jobs is, really it's many things, but one thing I'm always reminding myself and reminding the team that our job is to find the buyers and make pipeline happen for sales. So that's a very, motivating thing to remember. And, that can take a lot of different forms. And one form that often takes is that often, we used to say last minute, but it's, I'd say timely. It could be on a short timeline. It could be a very time-bound scenario that you need to do certain things to help sales create a result. So find the buyers, make pipeline happen, can also be find more buyers for that buying unit and make that open opportunity close. So one thing and this actually just happened at the end of last month, so I thought this would be a really cool story to share, because I'm sure this resonates with a lot of folks, especially in demand gen out there, is, we got a flurry of requests at the end of last month and trying to affect certain things. And so this can happen often where, sales has a very specific audience in mind with a very specific action that they want you to help them assist in that audience, doing. So what we had is we had 3 different requests last month. For the first one was give us a set of ads that's targeted, that is specifically aimed at the high value open accounts that have DocuSigns that are out in the wild right now. So Mitchell and team, can you give us a set of ads and a campaign on very short notice that is air cover to help more of those open DocuSigns move to close before the end of the month? That was one request we got. Second request we got is, hey, here's all of our most valuable ops that we think can close within 3 months. Now we need another set of ads for this other discrete audience where we need you to help, maybe not get those to close, but we need to help you propel those forward or possibly re-engage depending on the state of the account. Now, the third one we got was specifically for one product line we have where we wanted to throw some extra effort and activities on this product line to help find more buyers and create more pipelines specifically within the product line in a given time frame. This wasn't necessarily bound to the month, but this is the challenge there, where we got 3 requests in right at the same time within, like, I think it might have even all been on the same day. And we had to take these all in, digest all the requirements, set up the campaign, identify the audience, get the offers together, launch the campaign, and then set up reporting so that we could read back out to our sales executives on what was happening. So really big challenge. And I have been personally in the same scenario a lot of times before, where I either just couldn't do it, didn't have the capabilities or maybe even the know-how to do it, or it was where I had to like do ruthless prioritization on like, hey, like, thanks, we really want to help you, but we can kind of do one of these right now. But what's great is because of the capabilities we have now and the team too, we were able to address all these requests. So what's different now than what you would have in the past and not kind of, being able to, do either some or none of this is that in a lot of cases, if you have a very, very specific audience, that is what sales is asking you to affect, you really can't even pull the audience yourself. Like in all these audiences, we had to use not just data, people we had in the CRM, and not just people we had in one of our, in our database or data lake to be able to put those together, but we also had to combine, Salesforce data as part of the criteria here. And so, if you have to, fun. What's that?
Which is always fun.
Oh yeah, for sure. So it's like, okay, well, it couldn't be that easy, right? But you can kind of make it easy though, because you can, if you have a tool where you can kind of, move, define this audience using multiple criteria from multiple different places, that takes care of a lot of the work, because most of the work in some cases could come from being, having to put together all these very, very specific audiences, scrub the list, make sure the suppressions are there. So when we're using MarketingOS to do this, though, we don't even have to, we don't have to talk to data. Oh, we love data ops. They help us a lot, but we don't have to go to them for every single request to help us out. We can self-serve these audiences. And, I almost think of it as like the difference when you're doing email marketing between having to wrangle a bunch of like random CSVs and try to make sense of it to put together an email audience versus, okay, you have Marketo now, you can just use Smart List. And so that can sort of shortcut a lot of the lead time that we would need to be able to do this. And so any marketer will tell you and any salesperson, I guess, for that matter, will tell you there's nothing better to do for alignment than being able to say yes more often. Now, that doesn't mean you have to say yes every time to every single request. But if you're like me, there's been so many cases where I wish I could have said yes, but I couldn't. And now, if you're able to manage these audiences dynamically, you don't have to say no when you don't want to. So that's kind of the scenario. And this was a first time motion for us for doing all 3 of these specific things at once. And so a couple of them went really well, and then there's some things I would probably change. But it was really nice to be able to execute that. Even if it didn't, if it wasn't necessarily an A+ right off the bat, yes, we at least got that out. And now we have something that we can react to, we can iterate on, we can socialize, and we can just start getting better. Because if we just did nothing and we were just, oh, sorry, can't do it. No, just you're out of luck. Well, now we're not really for one, we didn't do anything to help find the buyers and make pipeline happen for sales. But secondly, we didn't even fail on anything to go and learn how to do it better, you know? So that was one thing that I thought, you know, it's even if you don't get an A+ on any of these, you know, sales, you know, last minute sales requests, at least you're setting yourself up so you can do it next time really well. So that's a little bit of kind of the you know, overview of that. And then also the reporting is nice too, where if you're able to look at your reporting, you know, not just looking at the leads that may come in or whatever else, but looking at it account by account, looking, you know, really digging into the audience and being able to tell sales, okay, you know, because sometimes the goal might not be to generate a lead. Sometimes the goal might be to you know, generate a groundswell of you know, re-engagement or awareness within those accounts. So I can look at the account and do reporting based on the account, or I can look at the audience as a whole and look at how much of that audience I was able to move forward or make do the thing or create that result that we were going for. So yeah,
and that helps you refine the audience as well. Like if you see that a portion of the audience didn't engage, like what is the common denominator of why that group didn't engage, and like what can you change to help it improve in the future?
Oh yeah, no, exactly, because you know, that's one thing where, you know, we did the motion, okay, it went off well with half of the audience, didn't go off so well with the other half. Okay, great. If we were to rinse and repeat this, which we will, okay, how can we refine this and hone in on what worked, and then also set up a new experiment on top of that to keep perfecting that motion.
Yeah, that's great. Anderson, from the conversations you've had with our customers, is that something that came up, or a lot of sales requests common and some of the challenges that they see on the execution side? Just wondering what you hear from the customer side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest points of friction between sales and marketing is that sales is often working with like these moving targets where they have accounts that are coming in and out of different buying cycles and buying stages, like moment by moment. I mean, I think like Mitchell's example of, hey, give us air cover for these DocuSigns that are out there. Like those DocuSigns are out there right now, and they need the air cover right now. And on the marketing side of things, like there's a long ramp usually to be able to get the data, scrub the data, hook that into a campaign and start to see any sort of movement. And so even if you say, yes, we're going to execute on that, the systems that are in place often lag behind the need. So like, I'm not sure like which is worse in this case, is saying, no, we can't support that DocuSign air cover, or yes, we can support it, but we're going to be 2 weeks behind you. So now the audience has changed. By the time you actually get to activate it, some of those DocuSigns have come in, some of the deals have dropped, and now you're placing like targeted ads that are irrelevant, right? So
that's right.
I think that like if we can provide ways for sales and marketing, for marketing to say yes more, and for sales to have more visibility into what's currently in motion, then you get more of that alignment between the two departments. They start to trust one another more and realize what's possible when they can work together and play to each other's strengths. And I think that, you know, Mitchell, you give some great examples already of like just the power of being able to say yes and then also execute and learn on it, right? And that takes a special, unique mix of tools, I think, to allow you to do that.
Definitely. Before we get into the next scenario, we do have a quick poll just to see where the audience is in terms of their challenges that they see within demand gen and or the supporting demand gen teams. Give it a few seconds.
Yeah, I mean, as we're waiting, like, I think that this is an excellent question. I've talked over the past 6 weeks or so with about 36 different people that are in demand marketing, growth marketing, marketing ops. And I can tell you that I'm interested to see the poll results because all 5 of these things have come up in some mixture on every single conversation that I've had. Like, so like, I guess I said that to say, if you're out there going like, yeah, these are my problems, like you are not in a unique position. You're not doing your job wrong. You're probably doing your job right if these are the things that are keeping you up at night.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for us, I mean, we see these run into different problems, you know, almost, depending on, the product line or segment we might be trying to focus on, because, in some things we're really established, but in some things we're newer and trying to, do things we haven't done before. So what could be one problem on one side of the house or with one segment is not the challenge in the other. And so being able to address all of them ideally, especially at a little bit of a bigger company with, or trying to do a lot of different things, that's, different problems for different segments.
Yeah. Well, let's see where we are. Generating high quality leads is definitely number one. Collecting high quality data, converting leads to pipeline, sales and marketing alignment, and tracking attribution. So each one has a little bit of everything, but generating high quality leads is definitely number one. And I think the next scenario that we're going to walk through is definitely focused on helping get those scenarios built, or get your high quality leads and audiences set. So let's dive in.
Lauren, real quick, but can I react to that poll real quick before we get into this one?
Of course.
Because I was not really sure how that was going to turn out. But one thing that I think is, if you look at this, generating high quality leads, the answer to that problem is having a zero waste approach to lead generation. So what I mean by that is, you're never going to be completely waste free all the time, but it's almost like you think of like the 5 nines uptime that you'll see in SLAs and some vendors. Like, we're never going to be 100%, but how close to perfect can we be? Because I'll tell you right now, if you can adopt a zero waste approach especially with digital advertising, you will generate nothing but high quality leads. Now, the challenge might be to scale it, but I'll tell you right now also that generating high quality leads with zero waste will make a lot of those other problems go away, because the leads will convert to pipeline more often. Sales will like you a heck of a lot more, and they probably already like you, but they'll like your leads that you're giving them more. And then attribution will actually be less of a problem, because the revenue will be raining down so hard, you won't be worried about having to scratch and claw for every little bit of attribution. It's still important, but trust me when I say it's a lot less important if you're killing your numbers by 150%. So I did just want to throw that out there in zero waste digital advertising. Look, I encourage everybody to embrace it. So that's all I had to say.
That sounds like our future webinar coming in the summer of 2022.
Yeah, I love that. Like, how to create a zero waste advertising strategy.
That's right.
Yeah. Mitchell, you just signed yourself up again. Yeah, transitioning over, and I think a big part of zero waste advertising, based on what Mitchell was just saying, is building that right audience and making sure you are targeting the right people. And I know Anderson has some points to get into and a lot of feedback that he's hearing from the field. So let's dive in.
Yeah, so it's one of the things, and we've touched on it already, but one of the things that I've been hearing in a lot of the interviews that I've had with folks that are just trying to generate high quality leads is the importance of being able to be flexible and nimble and dynamic when they're building an audience, because the clock starts ticking on irrelevance as soon as you have got the data into a static form. So if you can do things to set yourself up so that you're constantly coming back to a pool that you're dipping into that's always up to date and always relevant, then like Mitchell just said, like, your leads are going to be high quality because they're always relevant all the time. And there are a number of different things that I think you can look at to generate that high quality, high relevance, always up to date lead generation that will help take the pressure off, that pressure to act. You can see some of them on the screen here, like the importance of leveraging form fills, of harnessing website engagement, the importance of intent data. Like, all of those things are critically important, but just like any other data, it starts to degrade almost as soon as you freeze it and start to look at it and act on it. So if you remember from the late 90s or early aughts, there was this is the heyday of infomercials. There was that infomercial about its countertop rotisserie chicken cooker. And in that, the guy wearing a green apron, the value prop of that was that you can set it and forget it. And he would have the whole audience get that back to him. That's seared into my brain. I think that must have been a very formative time of my life. I think that's what we're talking about. We're talking about.
I know what you're talking about too. So.
Yeah. We're talking about dynamic audiences, something that you can set some criteria for and forget about it because you know it's going to always be up to date, which is just a radically different approach than going and submitting a data ops request to pull a list to do a one-time campaign to. We were talking a little bit earlier today that this is similar to, instead of pulling like a Salesforce report or something like that and then actioning that, setting up like smart lists in Marketo, where you know that when you go to act on that list, that the moment that you go and try to target against that list, you're getting the most up-to-date leads for that particular list because it's always dynamic, it's always up-to-date. So I want to actually steal some screen share away here because I want to look at how you might use one of the tools that we have, MarketingOS, to build a dynamic, always up-to-date audience. So I'm going to jump over into the MarketingOS platform here. And I want the scenario that I'm looking at here is this example. I mean, imagine that you have a campaign that you want to run specifically towards decision makers at companies that are visiting your company's website more than 3 times in the last week. Like that would indicate some pretty high quality first party intent. If you're able to zero in on decision makers at companies that are showing this kind of increased amount of engagement to your website. So in the MarketingOS platform, there's a section called buying signals, and we have something called websites, which basically de-anonymizes the companies that are visiting your website. So we can take those IP addresses and show you the companies that are associated with those. And what I've done here is I've looked over the past week at the ZoomInfo.com domain, and I've called up any page on our website that has the word pricing in the URL. And I want to see companies that are visiting any of our pricing pages at least 3 unique times over the past week. And so that's given me a tight list here of accounts that are showing an increased level of interest in how we're pricing our products and our services. Now, I could do a one-time list pull here and reach out to them now, but this list might be different in 2 weeks' time or 6 weeks' time or whatever. If I want some sort of evergreen motion, then I don't want to get mired down in data ops requests and list pulls. So that's where taking this criteria, I want this kind of company with this kind of activity, I can create an audience that's going to be dynamic. So it's just pulled over the same criteria. We're now in an audience builder here. Again, past week, the website contains pricing, at least 3 visits. And then I can go next over here and get the account list is going to come up one more time. But I'm going to be able to layer in lead filters as well, because I want to reach out to specific kinds of people at these companies. So here I see that same number of accounts, and I can start to layer in things like job title, department and job function. I could sync into my Salesforce or my HubSpot or Marketo instance and pull in particular account or opportunity types or exclude against those things. I've created a persona beforehand here. I'm extending the cooking analogy. This is like putting something into the oven that's half baked and pulling it out and it's already done. So I've got a sales and marketing decision makers persona created here. When I apply that, it puts in some management level and departments for me. So you can see here's the different lead level filters that have just applied. And that's taken a couple accounts out because on the ZoomInfo data, we're not finding those exact kinds of personas there. I can look at the kind of leads that this is generating. So these are actual people that I would be able to run a campaign against that are part of this audience today. But because this is a dynamic audience, this is always going to be up to date. So the criteria that I'm saving right here, I'm saving so that it is up to date in perpetuity. So I'm going to call this pricing page intent. Save this audience. What I can do with that now that this audience is being saved over here, is I can come back in here and preview all of the accounts, the leads, the firmographics, the campaigns we're running against that particular audience. And I can also start to take action on this audience. So if I want to start to get this audience into a LinkedIn or a Facebook campaign or our DSP, then I can push that directly from here. I can export the list of leads or list of accounts. So if I do want to run point-in-time campaigns, I can do that without having to reinvent the wheel here. I don't have to go put in another data ops request or something like that. There are a couple of other things I don't know if you want to stop for feedback there, but there are a couple of other cool things I think we can do with audiences here if we have just another minute.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll keep going. So we can see that this little icon here that looks like a little Venn diagram. One of the really cool things that you can do with these dynamic audiences is that you can layer them together. So I can come in and create a new audience by clicking that blue button, and I can combine or merge existing audiences. I think this one is huge in terms of setting up some big audiences that you know you're going to want to have them overlap or interact in certain ways, and have those overlap places always be up to date as well. So I've created a couple of different audiences here, one for my org's ICP. This is basically like my TAM, right? This has filters in it about industry, location, headcount, every kind of company that could be in the universe I might want to sell to. And then I can choose that I want to have this kind of little blue overlap here. I want them to also be within another audience. So we could use sales topic intent or sales intent topics. So this will be both of those things together. They're in my ICP, and they're showing third-party intent on topics related to lead generation and sales, the things that my folks might care about here. And then I can name this, I'll just name this like test audience here. That's going to create now a combined audience. Now you can think of like the different possibilities here, right? If you have one of these for websites data, one of these for your intent data, one of them that's your TAM, one of them that is your intent topics. There are a number of different combinations where you may want to layer those audiences on top of one another and find just the accounts that are common to both. So think of how tight you could get if you did 3 of these at once, where you took the pricing pages, the intent, your org's ICP, showing third-party intent on sales topics, and you layered those 3 together. That would be a tight cluster of accounts that are showing a lot of different buying signals saying like, hey, come get us. We're ready to buy from you if only you'll reach out.
Yeah, and you could do targeted campaigns to those specific ones, like even go further than just air cover. You could do maybe direct mail if you know that they're an account, and you start to do the air cover as well. So you can really get broad and deep into what you're seeing.
Yeah, and the thing that I love about that is it solves one of the pain points Mitchell was talking about earlier, which is if I have these audiences already built in here and I receive an urgent request from sales, there may be a way for me to layer in a couple of audiences I've already created and deliver on that request. Like, imagine what would happen if a sales leader came to you and said, I need you to do this really complex thing, right? And then you're able to come back within an hour or two and say, done. Like it's live now. Because I've already created.
I think that's a really good point to make about you're able to do complex things without getting lost in the complexity, because if you're able to do a series of audiences that you know are going to be fairly standard, that it all kind of maps back into your segmentation strategy, and you're able to use those co-dynamically, then you can stay really organized, and that actually will help you turn around requests even faster, and also not be all messy about it when you're doing it. Because like you can imagine if you're just like going in there, you're creating a ton of audiences, naming conventions are all out of whack. Like you don't know what's baked into this one, what's baked into that one. You just build a nice, clean series of dynamic audiences. You can layer them up really quickly. And you can say, like to my earlier example, you can say, okay, show me all sales leaders with open DocuSigns out that are with this product. So I've got an audience for each of those criteria, and if I put them all together, boom, I've got this, what used to be a really complex request I can just put together like that.
Yeah. And
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, another ability that exists within audiences is the ability to clone an audience. And so if you've got one that's like 90% of the way there, instead of having to build it from scratch, right, you clone it and it opens it right up to that audience editor. You tweak the couple of things and then you save it as a new audience. So the ability to sit on top of the ZoomInfo data, and that's what makes these audiences dynamic, is that ZoomInfo, like we're always updating information about the companies and the contacts, which is immediately then reflected into the audience. Yeah. So it's
actually,
not even
another thing just came into mind too, where I actually haven't thought of this a lot, but if you're really clean and organized with your audiences, that actually is cool because you can really get clear cost behind what it is costing you for each specific clean audience. to do a campaign or with a certain offer or something like that. For like, if you're like conflating your audiences together, like for example, if I was going to do one campaign and I just slammed all my customers and prospects together in one thing, I wouldn't really know what the cost per lead or cost per MQL difference might be between my customer audience and my prospect audience. And I know from here at ZoomInfo and like most other companies, our customer audience comes in a lot less cost-wise versus our prospect audience. But if we just slam it all together, we're not really understanding how much more efficient a customer audience might be versus a combined or a prospect audience, and that's going to set us up to be inefficient the way we run our campaigns and use our dollars.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's another thing that when you're building those audiences, I know that you're also able to add in, I know that compliance is a big topic across demand gen, and ensuring that you're within compliance is very important to all companies, especially during these times. And so I know that you're also able to add a suppression list. So it not only is it for compliance reasons, if you have people that are saying, no, you cannot email me, but also if Mitchell's doing those DocuSign campaigns and you have people that have already signed or you have people that have dropped, you can add them to your suppression list. So you're not spending those dollars on wasting it because they've either already bought or they're not going to buy right now. So having the ability to also add suppression into the audience or suppressing the accounts that you don't want to have included in the audience, I think is really powerful as well.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point. You really, sorry, go ahead, Anderson.
I was just going to say, if you're using, a CRM like a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a Marketo, then we can sync with that information. And so if you're suppressing them in there, we can bring that suppression flag over into the MarketingOS system and just automatically be excluding them all the time. Like you can apply filters to help you do that, so that even you're not even having to remember to like upload a suppression list if you're already doing that in your system of record.
Yeah, that's an important one to remember because you can never be zero waste without dynamic suppression. Yeah. So you're always going to have more like kind of, more waste in there than you might be able to otherwise avoid. Because I mean, shoot, if you're like us, especially at a bigger company, you're signing, multiple hundred new logos a month. I mean, that can really creep up on you. And if you're not like, slamming those new suppression CSVs in and around everything, you're always going to have a little bit of waste in there. So dynamic is the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we're building the outline for your next webinar.
I know. Or multiple webinars.
Yeah.
So now that we have talked about sort of how we're getting our campaign set up, how we're answering the call from our sales counterparts, what is the next best step? So what does that handoff look like? And I think that's the last scenario that we want to walk through here today. And then we'll get to the question and answer portion. But the last scenario we wanted to walk through with our experts here is around the lead handoff to sales. And I know, Mitchell, you have this experience, but also Anderson, you have experience and insights from the customer, and as well as what we can do for technical wise from a ZoomInfo standpoint. So I'll let you guys fight about who wants to go first.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, yeah, Mitchell, why don't you talk first just about like what that looks like at ZoomInfo and in your role, like how that marketing to sales handoff is happening and what are the wins and some of the challenges?
Yeah, sure. So there, with a big team and multiple different product lines, there are a lot of different rules as far as how we're managing leads and how we're handing them off or when we're handing them off. The different specialized teams that handle different leads that are associated with different product lines is one challenge. Let's see. Being able to sort leads and treating them differently, the ones that are highly scored versus lower scored. And so that kind of goes into the automated qualification criteria, automated actions. And then especially, I can never forget that, especially for, a point of pride of ZoomInfo is, 90-second response time for an inbound lead specifically. And that can get a little more complicated and challenging when you're dealing with, okay, it's one thing to just do, hey, an inbound ZoomInfo free trial. But then when you get into, I want a demo of MarketingOS or, I want a demo of DaaS, being able to maintain that 90-second SLA across, a much bigger, portfolio of product lines is challenging. Those are some of the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, and I mean I think that really resonates with a lot of what I've been hearing in the market as well. Is that there are some pretty strict rules of engagement, but then there are also like some simple and some complicated processes that have to happen to actually get the right information to the right reps at the right time. And almost every person I've interviewed has a different process around this, and like every person I've talked to like leads with the caveat of like, well, it's not perfect and we're still working on it. And like, it doesn't matter like what the segment is, what the industry is. Like, I think like marketing ops people are really quick to kind of like hedge their bets about saying like, there's improvements that can happen in this process. And one of the things that ends up coming up in those conversations often when we're talking about ZoomInfo and ZoomInfo solutions is how some of the workflows automation that we have available in our platforms allows one solution for some of those different criteria, getting the right information to the right people at the right time. In fact, I have an example that I can show using the MarketingOS platform here. So let me fire that up again. All right, cool. So this is kind of where we left off previously, but the MarketingOS has a feature, and you can see it right up here, is workflows, and this is in our SalesOS platform as well. And this is an automation tool that's built into the system here. It's designed to push ZoomInfo information where you want it to go without you having to come in and do it manually. So it's really it's an efficiency tool. So this is another example of something that you can set and you can forget. So I'm just now blatantly ripping off that infomercial. But I think that the place that this is helpful in the marketing to sales alignment and passing off those high quality leads is you can automate passing off leads and passing off lead info based off of conversion activities that are taking place on your website. And so you can see some examples here of what these workflows look like. But I'm playing around with the scenario here of like you have like a high intent form on your page. That could be like a free trial form. It could be a send me more info form. It could even be like a webinar registration form for a particular webinar that you know if people are registering for that, then that's high intent for the products or services that you offer. You can actually trigger a workflow to get not only the information of that form submitter, but information about other people in the company into your SDR team's hands or over into your system of record. And I'll show you how easy it is to set one of those up. So I'm going to use that blue create workflow button. There are a number of different things, changes to ZoomInfo data that you could use to trigger a workflow. And I'm not going to explain all of these at this point. The one I want to look at is Form Complete here. This is looking at form submissions to your website. Form Complete is like it's a form enrichment product. It works alongside your existing forms. So if you're using Pardot forms or HubSpot forms, this isn't a replacement for that. Form Complete actually enriches data in those forms at the point of submission. So you can actually ask for fewer form fields. Like you could say, just on my form, just give me your email address. And that person puts in their email address. When they go to click submit, ZoomInfo is going to query our database, and we'll grab all the other info you want. We'll put it in the form for you. The user doesn't have to do that. So if somebody has interacted with one of those Form Complete forms, then you can actually create an automated workflow so that that information about that company or about the people at that company goes somewhere else. So we're going to say when someone submits or abandons, I don't have abandoned form submission set up on this one, so we'll just do submissions on this particular form. Here are all the different forms that I have. This is probably a good one. It's called my best demo form. So we're going to use best demo for example here. What do we want to have happen when somebody submits this best demo form? Well, we're going to get the form submitter's information. So this is in addition to that. So what I want to do here is I want to come in and select other decision makers that work at the company where the person submitting that form works. So I'm going to come in and grab the same kind of people as before. Let's get directors and VP of sales and marketing. You can see those filters being applied over here on the left. And I can come in here and define even certain types of companies. I'm only interested for this form if those people work in a software company and the company is located in North America. Further, I could even layer on and say, of all of those companies that fit that criteria, I'm only interested in those where we're already showing that they're showing some interest or consideration in our products. So we're able to layer on funnel stages onto this workflow as well. And now when somebody submits that form, we're going to pull information around these decision makers at that subset of interested companies. And then I can look at integration filters. Does this company exist in my Salesforce or not? Maybe that's not important to me right now. Because what I want to do here is I want to export that information. You can see there's a number of different systems of record that we could export to. For this, we're going to export them to Marketo as a lead. And check this out. I can put them directly into a particular Marketo campaign. So we're going to start a nurture campaign to decision makers at companies that are showing interest or consideration when somebody else at that company has submitted form information. So now they're going to start to see like this supporting air cover come in after this form is submitted. And this is going to happen automatically. It's going to trigger whenever one of those form submissions comes in and the company meets that particular criteria. It can even refine the number of contacts. If I don't want to kind of blow up a company, I can say, let's just limit it to 3 contacts per company and create that workflow. And now that's another automated motion where I'm not having to come in and do reporting and set up complicated workflows between systems of record. ZoomInfo is just going to push that information, put them right into the campaign. And it's easy for me to come back in and run a workflows report under lists and see how that's been processed. I can come in and turn this off if I want, if it's just wildly successful. So that was kind of one of the things I was thinking of, how ZoomInfo's workflows can help in that marketing to sales handoff there, is getting people in the right campaigns at the right time.
Another set it and forget it. It just should be our motto.
I think we might get sent a cease and desist if we were to do that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very true. That's true. That's amazing. And I think, as you were saying, I think the power of workflows in the next, the data-driven next best insight is really a powerful tool, because we know I've been working on the marketing persona for years now, talking to people just like Mitchell in terms of like making sure that they have a lot of manual processes are within demand gen and creating lists. And so that's one of the main goals that we're trying to have with MarketingOS, is that we're trying to optimize the areas that are the most challenging for the demand gen user or the marketing user, to try and optimize their campaign creation, optimize their next best action, making sure that we are using data at the forefront. And I think this conversation really has helped highlight a lot of that as well.
Yeah, you really
Anything
can't
else you guys wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you really can't, do all the work to be so on the spot and so responsive and deliver that, that campaign to sales like we were talking about earlier. All that can, don't do all that and then not think about how is that, when I generate that lead, how is that going to get over to sales in a timely fashion into the right spot. So don't do all that hard work and all that. Your amazing campaign will not have the results that it deserves if you don't have, equal, attention into the handoff piece there too. So sales will love you even more if you can just make sure all that goes off nicely.
Yeah.
Automated is nice. Automated means no mistakes, theoretically.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Exactly. No, we have a few more minutes left. So I think we're going to transition over to Q&A. We've had a few great questions come through, but ask any questions that you might have. We have 2 experts here. You can ask Mitchell about anything that he'd like to do from a demand gen standpoint. And then also Anderson, any insights that you had from the field. Anderson also has a lot of really great knowledge about ZoomInfo as a whole. So if you have any specific questions around that. But the first question that we see is actually for you, Mitchell. What channels do you typically do campaigns across?
Oh my gosh, all of them really. I mean, that's too easy of an answer, I guess. But the one thing I will say is that especially when you talk about account-based marketing, demand gen, if you're doing like demand gen fundamentals, you're really focused on, one channel. but when and you always want to have, especially with higher ASP, more complex sale, more stakeholders or more people or be members of a buying unit involved. You really, our job, like I said earlier, our job is to find the buyers, right? And so you're not going to find the buyers if you're like a one-trick pony with one motion. So you don't want to like just do email or just do ads or just do any one thing. Having a multi-channel strategy is important. Now, that can change. Like I've talked a lot and kind of referred back to, ZoomInfo, especially over the last couple of years. We have a lot of different product lines and a lot of different new segments that it's part of our TAM now. And so each one of those is going to call for a different mix of channels. So you really have to, don't just do one. There might be some cases where one is okay, but in most cases, you're going to want to have a multi-channel approach, and that will be different based on the segment. So, you kind of got to put your journalism school hat on and be like, okay, who, what, when, where, why, how? Like, what am I trying to do? Who is the audience that I'm trying to affect here? And, how am I going to interact with them? What is the offer that I'm going to use or offers that I'm going to use in this one specific segment? And given who that audience is and the offers that I have and the result I want to create, what is the best channel to engage them on? That might be it could be all sorts of different formulas. I mean, for us, we definitely see different patterns in depending on the product lines we have, especially if you're going into new audiences or new, kind of newer parts of your TAM. You might need to rely less on your own, internal database and more on, like a third-party media program, for example, if you're trying to like build up a new audience. Like, you can't just go into the database and just say, oh, I'm just going to do a big cold send with everybody I can find that has a title that's relatively, somewhat in line. No, that's not going to be successful. What's going to be successful is if you build up that audience through a well thought out engagement strategy, build that audience up, then you're able to tap into that audience over and over again in the right way. So kind of a tough answer, non-answer on that one, but that's kind of the
Yeah, I was part of a conversation with the head of product and one of his counterparts, but also a good friend. And he was actually saying that they did a CMO campaign where they focused on being able to, they did like a really glossy handout that actually like went on the desks of the CMOs, and it said like whatever the company's name was, and then it was like top CMO. And then like the call to action was do you want to be the next top CMO? So we all know that C-level executives like to be competitive. So it was like a great way to generate people to like actually do interviews, and then they would do their own like next best CMO. And he actually said it was a high pay, like a high dollar, but like really high impact campaign that just kept feeding itself because they were so competitive and wanting to be the next best CMO that they always called back. And that he was saying he wouldn't do that to like you're saying, anyone and everyone, but the target accounts where they really wanted that engagement, he knew that they could get some really high quality feedback, engagement and conversion from it.
Lauren, I like that example because there is, I think a good example of being strategic is if you're using like one thing purely to set up the next thing to go off amazing. You'll see that a lot of times when let's say a good example. Okay. Let's say you have actually we could be the good example here, because let's say you are really established in one market, but you're a newer player in a new market and you're trying to do something, kind of like a new paradigm that you're launching into that market. So you might want to spend a lot more on awareness stuff, on the front end, not to generate a bunch of leads right out of the gate off awareness, but you're doing that just purely to identify the audience, start a relationship there, which is going to make all of your subsequent demand creation stuff go off much better. And you can really see the difference if you have multiple segments where, because like in our sales segment where we're really established, we can just cut right to a lot of the demand gen stuff. But in newer segments, like, trying to engage with like, with our DaaS product and like trying to engage with like, data scientists, we can't just go in there like they're a bunch of like sales directors. So we have to do something in the front end that's strategic purely to set up our next wave of motions to go off how we would expect. And then we can use a lot of comparisons and benchmarks from our sales segment to compare it to the operations segment, and we can see like, you know, what the difference is, and you know, keep on refining that motion, and like and you know, making it replicate our most established segments as good and as quickly as we can.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good idea.
Anderson, is there anything that you saw as common trends in those conversations that you had with our customers? Any channels that they usually went across?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I found that was common is that this is cliche, but there wasn't anything common. Like each company based off of like
it's so true.
Yeah, but based off of like its segment and its maturity level, and like I talked with one company that had such a robust multi-channel approach that in a pre-interview survey, I had listed out like a bunch of different options. Like these are different marketing channels that maybe you use, you know, some of them were social,
yeah.
some were DSP, some were email campaign stuff. And they checked every single one and added like 6 or 7 others under the other. And then I talked with another person who said, right now, email marketing is the only thing that we do. We're really trying to just drive people to our website in order to download white papers. And then we're converting off of those. One day, maybe we'll push to LinkedIn, maybe we'll push to Facebook, maybe we'll get into Google AdWords. And so I think what like the advice that I would like double down on is what Mitchell said. Like it's not so much about the number of channels that you're using or this perfect mix of channels, as knowing what the outcome is that you want for a particular campaign and working backwards to find the channels that are going to allow you to reach the right people to influence that outcome. And so that's where like this demand and growth marketing is more art than it is science. It's not about like the right proportions of a few select channels. It's about knowing like what is going to compel the behavior that I've stated as the outcome to get that account or that prospect to the next stage in the funnel, and working backwards from that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lauren, I could even offer up another facet of that thought as well. And a lot of times you will be think about a multi-channel approach that you're putting together for a given segment. Sometimes based on whatever and I usually look at the average selling price of the product as kind of my like bellwether for what can I bear as a blended cost per MQL for this given segment. Because if you have a product that's like a 6-figure ASP, well, I can bear a whole heck of a lot. But if you, you're not going to want to have the same approach if you have another product in the portfolio that might be like a 4-digit ASP. So that will often dictate what your channel mix could and should be, because you have a blended cost per MQL that you're trying to stay below at or below in order to set yourself up for proper ROI. Like you can't be breaking the bank on a cost per lead for a 4-digit ASP product. So the more multi-channel you can do, you can actually do some expensive, more resource heavy stuff if you're balancing that out with more cost-effective stuff, and you're able to use those two things together. Like if your cost per MQL through LinkedIn is like $100 per, and your in email is essentially free. Well, if you can set up the right blended set of programs there, then your blended cost, if easy math 50-50. Now you just cut your blended cost per MQL in half. So I think that's another important thing. I'm kind of reminding myself and the team of that all the time too, is, there's certain product lines where we can go all out and we can bias toward more expensive, but there's other ones where we have to be a little more thoughtful on what that blend is, and able to set ourselves up for ROI. Because like you could create a result, but boy, if you didn't do that in an ROI conducive manner, you're not going to get a whole lot of chances to do that again. So all you demand gen marketers out there, I highly recommend.
There you go. No, that's great. I think we hit on a lot of the points for this next question, but I'll just see if you guys have anything else. So what do you think is the most important area to focus on when looking to get those higher quality leads? I know we talked about the importance of audience, and then Mitchell, you were just talking about, and Anderson, you guys were both just talking about the importance of having the channels that your campaigns are leading to and being strategic about that. Is there anything else that you think the viewers should focus on when trying to get more high quality leads?
I mean, the only thing I can say, and I say this to myself and the team all the time, is that like the audience, everything starts and ends with the audience. Like you can have everything else right. You can have the perfect piece of content, the perfect like expensive interactive offer, but if you don't have the audience, if you can't manage the audience or you don't have access to the audience, it's just nothing will happen. That's where all the power is. That's what leads you to zero waste. That's what leads you to high ROI. And like, you know, I mean, there's many pieces that need to fit, but like the audience is the most important, most powerful piece. So the better you can do with your audience, the better your campaign is going to be. And, you know, and if you can take that and combine it with a zero waste approach, you will have a very good time doing this stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I think in addition to that, and this is just another way of like looking at audience, but like the audience is a collection of data, right? So I think that the data that comprises your audience and making sure that that's clean and up to date is super important. And that's where when you use a product like MarketingOS, like that's built on top of like the most robust data in the industry. And that's why it's important that it sits on top of that huge amount of data. We're processing 1 billion data events every single day. And that's what's allowing those audiences to be always up to date, so that it's the right people in those accounts, it's the right leads, the right contact information, that you're sure that the efforts that you're putting into those channels are arriving in front of the right set of eyes at the right time. And so the audiences can be dynamic, but the information that comprises those audience, the data that comprises the audience, needs to be accurate and up to date as well. So I think those two things go hand in hand.
Yeah. There's one more question that I think will be a quick answer, and it's coming back to you again, Mitchell. What call to action do you push to in those air cover campaigns?
That's a good one. It's usually two things. It's usually either trying to, if we know something is got a lot of legs, a lot of times what we're doing is we're just trying to seal the deal. And in that case, we're really not trying to generate a lead necessarily, but we're really trying to back up and give air cover to that sales team that's trying to close that deal with just trying to drive a lot of traffic in that buying unit or that account into a page that's going to further back up the value prop. Sometimes a solution page, but sometimes it'll be like a case study page or something like more mid-funnel. That's really just trying to get in there and giving that new perspective to try to seal the deal or just back up what we're already trying to, the value we're already trying to communicate. That's one. And the second one, it often will be where we're trying to, it's maybe not such a late stage op, but an op that maybe is in like a first couple stages, and we're trying to just keep it moving through the funnel, where we're trying to set what we'll call like a demo 2, and we're trying to get more members of that buying unit involved, or trying to have more subsequent meetings that we can attach onto that champion. So those are the two things that we see most in those types of campaigns.
Great. Awesome. Well, I wanted to say thank you to our speakers, especially, but also thank you to the viewers for tuning in. As a reminder, you will get a recording of this webinar in the next 48 hours. Be sure to keep an eye out on your inbox, and have a great day, everyone. See you soon for our next Mitchell webinar. Just kidding.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.